What is really going on right now in the war in Ukraine?
I think people will discover over the next couple of weeks that the losses taken by Ukrainian forces have been enormous, much, much larger than anybody cares to admit. I think we will also have a different view of Russian operations. Now, remember, Russians are different from us. We do things differently. Many of us thought that when the Russian forces entered Ukraine, that they would come in like a sledgehammer. In reality, they didn't do that at all. And one of the principal reasons was that Putin made it very clear to his generals. He said, when this is over, we would like to live with the Ukrainians. Remember, his goals were very straightforward. Number one, neutrality for the Ukrainian state. Number two, autonomy or independence for the Donbas republics that are Russian, as well as agreements that Russian-speaking citizens, people living in Ukraine who are Russian, will not be treated badly. They will not be second-class citizens anymore, and they have been. And that's something nobody ever talks about. And then finally, renounce any further claim on Crimea. Crimea was never Ukrainian, never part of Ukraine. And they all go back to Khrushchev and his drinking bout in the 1950s, after which he awarded his buddies in Kiev, who were Russians, by the way, control of Crimea. All goes by the wayside. Crimea has never been Ukrainian. It's an ahistorical claim. Those are the basic conditions. And as far as I can tell, they have never changed. There was never any interest in, quote unquote, conquering Ukraine. If you have an army of perhaps 450,000 or maybe a little larger, you're not going to be able to invest a country the size of Ukraine. I mean, from one end of Ukraine to the other is sort of like Toronto all the way down to Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, it's just an enormous place. But I think now things have changed, because not so much because of this supposed Ukrainian resistance, although there have been some ugly events there. I mean, some of these Ukrainian forces, to be frank, have behaved like ISIS and committed terrible atrocities against the Russians when it was never called for and never necessary. Not that that is ever necessary, but it just was completely unjustified. And we're not giving it any coverage or attention. I think Tucker had something on very briefly, but that's the tip of an iceberg. But I think now Putin is listening to Zelensky and his negotiators, but I'm not sure he's taking them seriously anymore. That's unfortunate, because this means he has to reassess what he wants to do. And he may decide he's just going to hold on to everything east of the Dnieper River. Much of that was not historically Ukrainian either. Much of it was, for hundreds and hundreds of years, Mongolian and Tartar, then became Russian under Catherine the Great. And some of it contains Ukrainians, but a lot of it contains people who are Russians. And I think he may decide that, he's going to have to do that. We don't know. I mean, I'm not privileged to those circles, but that is not an unreasonable conclusion for him to reach, particularly if he decides that he can't trust anything these Ukrainians say or do. I mean, at this point, given Zelensky's behavior and resistance to any sort of reasonable outcome, maybe he decides, let Zelensky talk, and we'll just end up doing what I just described, seizing the whole eastern side. But there's another facet to this thing that's very dangerous. And as this constant stream of supplies, equipment, weapons coming in largely from Poland. And I would not be surprised if he acts to stop it. He's launched a lot of strikes with missiles on key installations where he knew that we were training Ukrainian forces and many foreign mercenaries, where we might try to stage, quote unquote, false flags and blame it on Russia. This, has happened in Syria. Mm-hmm. So I think we may see something on the ground in Western Ukraine coming down out of Belarusia that just launches from, if you know where Brest is in the part of Belarusia, look at that as a sort of center of gravity, and then moving south down towards Lvov or Lviv. We could see something like that to make it very clear that they are not going to tolerate any more resupply to opponents in Ukraine. This is dangerous because that comes very close to our borders, to NATO's borders, and you could see something happen there that may not be planned, may not be wanted, but occurs, an accident of some kind. Then you find that the war has widened very, very dramatically. That would be disastrous.